Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. So, Saturday, November 1st. Clocks changed last week, so we've got these very early and darker evenings, shorter days, and sort of autumn is fully arrived. Lots of leaves all over the place. I find quite beautiful. So tomorrow, a group of us will be going down to, planning to go down to Hartridge Monastery, our branch monastery down in Devon, to participate in their Katina festival. So it's the robe offerings ceremony that takes place after the 3 months rains retreat. So looking forward to that. Several of us have been going to the various branch monasteries. This was the last one, so the Katina season, quote unquote, finishes on Thursday morning at dawn. It's the lunar month after the rains retreat, and so. But already, it's a season of movement and travel and connecting with different people, communities, and so. For myself, I quite appreciate that feeling of harmony and connection. So one of the things that I'm signed up for to use the more noble, wholesome aspects of the internet. One of the things I'm signed up to is what's referred to as yellow pages, and then these by Ajahn Jayasaro. Ajahn Jayasaro is our beloved English monk. He's spent his virtually his entire monastic life in Thailand, and twice a week he sits down. And maybe some of you are signed up for this. He sits down with a pad of yellow paper, lined paper, yellow pages, and a pen. And he writes a one-page Dhamma reflection. So on Saturdays and Tuesdays. And so this being Saturday, and then he takes a photograph of it, and then he sends that off via WhatsApp. And then other people pick it up in different parts of the world, and they put it on websites, and other people forward it on, and so. A lot of people end up with these, and I'm signed up for it, and so I was reading this morning's offering, and it inspired me to. It inspired a theme for this evening's reflection. So I want to give him that credit and gratitude for inspiring a theme. So in his little one-page Dhamma teaching that he writes by hand, and he was offering a reflection on the middle way, the Buddhist middle way of practice. So for those of us who are familiar with the Buddha Dhamma, Buddha's teachings, the middle way was really that thing that let him crack through to the final stages of awakening. He tried these very tense, well, maybe that's not the right word, but intense practices of asceticism. He had tried that. Of course, he had, as we are told, at least historically, he came from a very privileged background, privileged upbringing, So sometimes his father is referred to as a king, or maybe just a very wealthy headman. We're not quite sure, but it indicates everything is sort of pointing to the Buddha himself had a very easy upbringing, one of comfort. And then at the age of 29, he left home, searching for the deathless, searching for non-suffering, seeking peace, full enlightenment. And for 6 years he practiced, here again what we're told historically, he was involving himself, practicing a lot of ascetic practices, really very intense. When you read the descriptions, it's pretty full on. And but then through various events, he tried the middle way. He tried something softer. He had a memory of pleasure. He was as a young boy sitting underneath a rose apple tree. Apparently his father was working nearby. It was a harvest, if I remember correctly, and he was just sitting in the shade of this rose apple tree and went into a state of calm, of deep calm as a young boy. And he remembered this. Here he was practicing all these ascetic practices, starving himself and going out and sitting in the midday sun for hours, or sitting out at night in the cold without enough clothing on, just to sort of torturing the body. And he had this memory came up. It's one of the things that all right, that was a blameless pleasure, something that was blameless. Also, he was offered one day, so the famous story of being offered milk rice. So here he'd been starving himself and just taking such small amounts of food that the descriptions of being emaciated, painfully emaciated, very low energy. And then he would receive this offering of milk rice, and which would have been very, very lovely, calorie-filled, delicious food. And it gave him strength to practice. He wasn't just exhausted and trying to get through the day. So this idea of a way of practice, somewhere in between extreme torturing the body, and extreme pleasure. So somewhere between being too loose and just relaxed and easygoing, and too tight. So the Majjhima Patipada, Majjhima means in the middle way. Majjhima Patipada, practice, middle way of practice. Now, so what I want to riff on a little bit this evening is that for us to maybe just consider the middle way. It's something that most of us are familiar with, but just as a reminder or a way of contemplating it, a way of working with it, is that the middle way is not a place. It's not a point. So the middle way, it's because people say, well, tell me, what's the middle way? Where's my middle way? Well, we need to find it. We need to find it. The middle way, it's movable. And so the middle way is going to be different for me than it is for Anagarika Rabi or for Tambirio or anybody or any of you people. The middle way that's going to work for me in my spiritual practice is going to be different. There's not a middle way that fits all. I think this is really important because oftentimes, or sometimes at least, in spiritual practice it's very easy for us to fall into comparison with other people, and maybe what is maybe really working for another individual. Or we might read something and get very inspired when we read about some great saint or spiritual practitioner, and maybe even read about their quote unquote awakening experience, and that might be very inspiring, and that's okay. But maybe their middle way was really different from what we can handle. We're all different, as we know. I mean, that's a truism. We need to use discernment. Okay, what is the middle way? And here again, and realize that what's middle way for me today might be different tomorrow. What my middle way tomorrow is might be different from what it was last week. So there's the sort of micro middle ways. There's expanded. So what's the middle way? I was talking at the meal today, offering a little reflection at the mealtime. There's a sort of shape to our year. Certain times of the year are more engaged. Certain times of the year, like this, there's a lot more travel. Certain times of the year, we're in intensive sort of quiet. Like our winter retreat was really quiet by design. And so what's middle way for me right now is going to be different during the winter retreat, when I have maybe far less engagement. There's more space, or we have a retreat period, a solitary retreat period, where maybe we can push ourselves in certain ways that we can't do right now. When tomorrow morning we're going to get up and go get on the minibus and be out all day. It's going to be a long day, and so we need to be attentive, to be mindful of our energies, our physical energies, our mental, emotional energies. So that we're not, it's just, here again, not just, okay, this is my middle way, and this is my middle way all the time. And so one of the things that Ajahn Jayasaro was using as an example, or was pointing to, was, don't choose the middle way between bad and awful. Okay, I thought that was, and I think I'm quoting that pretty accurately. That's no, that's not going to bring good results. We know that. One of the pitfalls, or things that we really need to be attentive to, is deluding ourselves into feeling or believing in a particular in finding that middle way, because when defilement, so in Buddhist practice, especially in Theravada, oftentimes this word defilement is most classically referring to the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so the greed and hatred, greed and anger thing, those are pretty easy to see. Those are pretty easy for us to become aware of, quite especially through meditation practice. But they're pretty upfront. They're pretty in our face. But delusion, that's the thing about delusion, is that we're deluded. It's very hard to see delusion. We're harder to see delusion because that's the way delusion works. It deludes us. And so the mind, that inner committee, the mind that is very convincing, and it can make all sorts of really, really good excuses, even and also in spiritual practice, and sort of make all sorts of arguments for maybe this is my middle way, and this is my middle way right now, and I'm balancing between too slack and too tight, between asceticism, being too tight with that, and being just too loose, and just lost in pleasure, lost in comfort. And so that's why spiritual friendship is really crucial. The Kalyanamitta in the Pali language is a spiritual friendship. Also, there's sati sampajanya, which is the mindfulness and clear comprehension. But the other translation I'm really very fond of right now is this situational awareness. So that, for instance, as we're going about our day or our week or a month or a year, is that situational awareness of what's appropriate practice for any given time. So how are we dealing with it? It's not just around practice; it's around just life. In any given moment, trying to apply a middle wayness. middle way approach to the things that arise and come into our consciousness, our conscious experience at any given time during the day and evening. How do I respond? It's like responding to something, interacting with something, applying ourselves in any way, using that middle way approach of, okay, so is this balanced? And here again, the middle way, it's not in the middle necessarily. There's a range, and so. And the other thing around the middle way is it's that there are times that maybe that within that middle way that we intentionally apply extremeness. We intentionally put ourselves into that more extreme end of the scale. So let's say we, like for instance, undertaking maybe ascetic practices. And the Buddha did allow this. He did allow this, sort of extra practices. So we might, for instance, here, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a monk or a nun or whatever. You don't have to be living in a spiritual community. But maybe we undertake some extra ascetic practice of giving up something which is our normal, maybe within our normal comfort zone. Some people might do fasting, and they might do it for ascetic reasons. So, for instance, some of us fast for health reasons, but we might want to say, well, okay, I'm gonna try. Sometimes members of the community will ask me if they'd like to try maybe a few days of fasting, and just to see what that's like, to give without that comfort and that of food. And so we do that cautiously. We do that with circumspection. I'll use that word again. So not just to deep dive and then throw ourselves into a situation where it's not beneficial for us. Or we might take the ascetic practice, say, to go out for a long alms round. So we go out, we can go out with our bowl. So the monks and nuns do this very frequently. They'll go to the village, go to the town or city, and you don't know if you're going to eat. You don't know. Pretty sure, but you don't know. Or to go for a walking pilgrimage, or what's referred to as tudong. I was reflecting on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the other night, similar to 2 weeks ago, the other night, one of the monks and novices, they did a little mini walking pilgrimage. They left here after the meal one day, and they walked to Winchester. So they did it. They walked, I don't know how many hours they walked on that first day, and then they found a place to sleep. And then the next day they walked all the way into Winchester, and they went on alms round, and then some good friends of the monastery, I'm assuming, brought them back. They came back, and so they were putting themselves in the weather forecast was not good. It was, saying, it's going to be probably wet, probably windy, and so putting yourselves out, and so you might, step out of our regular comfort zone. There's all sorts of things that we can do that are more extreme than that, but we need to be careful to make sure that we're doing them for the right reasons. Why are we intentionally going more outside the middle way towards that more ascetic edge of the spectrum? So the Buddha made it very clear that if you're not just him, but if you're doing that to sort of prove something to somebody else, or to be seen as something, so that other people see us in a certain way, then that's we need to be very attentive to that. If we're doing it maybe to test ourselves, to face discomfort, to face the unknown, and to see how the heart and mind deal with that. Because we can get it's pretty easy actually to get complacent in community. Well, in any situation, and some people might think, oh wow, that's pretty extreme. They get up at 4 a.m. and they've got 5 a.m. Meditation, and for some people that is extreme. And we might think, oh, you can never do that. Couldn't live on just 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, and not having certain creature comforts. And that's fair enough, because that's not what we're maybe used to. But for those of us who have been living that, even sometimes for a short while, maybe that's even the way we were living, in lay life. You can get complacency can edge in because we get used to it. So yeah, pushing ourselves in some ways it can be very useful. But here again, intentionally saying this a second time, we need to be very, very mindful of why we're doing it, why we're actually putting ourselves into that extreme edge. And if it's really, if we are doing it for maybe one of the reasons which is more unwholesome, it doesn't mean to not do it. So it doesn't then go, oh no, I shouldn't go on a walking pilgrimage because I was sort of thinking this would be kind of, I could show the others how, something. No, still go, but be attentive to that, and to to learn to let go of that, to push through that, instead of just giving up on the practice. And so it's tricky. It's because as we probably know, the mind is tricky. It's really the human intellect. It's amazing. And we can use it for just the most amazingly good things, the most amazingly neutral things, but we can also get ourselves really twisted up into psychological knots, and that's where spiritual practice and whatever, in particular, for most people, not all people, but silent meditation, quiet meditations, are so helpful in getting us tuned in. So, we're not just meditating to get rid of thinking, to get rid of feelings. No, it's to understand, to notice, to understand, to let go of the things that are binding us, that are snagging us, ensnaring us in unwholesome patterns of thought that are dukkha, that are suffering, that are stressful, that are bringing discontent and dissatisfaction in our lives. And so, putting ourselves here again, if taking a set time, and it's good to have a fixed. If we are going to go into a more intensive practice, it's good to have a fixed, so that it's not open-ended. So that we're not straying outside. This would be my suggestion: straying outside or pushing ourselves outside of the middle way. And so that's what we're reading is anywhere near accurate. The Buddha, he just was. That was it. The asceticism was it. So it was not until he sort of woke up to another way, which actually he got a good result. Oh. Eating that milk rice. Oh, I've got actual energy to practice. Oh, right. This mindfulness of breathing meditation. This is a blameless pleasure. Instead of just torturing ourselves. Now and then again, the slack side. There's that lovely. The Buddha used different images, but the one I like is the one of the stringed musical instrument, like a lute or something, and that if the string is too loose, we know it just kind of. If for all of us who have ever played any sort of, even in the most basic level, just picked up our brother's guitar and kind of strummed it a bit, or played with the tuning pegs, is that when it's too loose, it sort of flaps against the frets, or it kind of rattles, or just doesn't have any sort of tone or pitch or any sort of beauty to it. And then if we tighten it up too tight, I remember playing with my brother's guitar once and really cranking the tuning pegs, and twang, broke a string. So if we tune ourselves too tight, maybe we break, figuratively speaking. And if it's too loose, it's not gonna be effective in any way. And so, finding just the right pitch, the right note. But here again, I was reflecting on this afternoon. Is that the musical instruments, they need retuning, and certain instruments you can even tune them differently for different musical pieces. You can change. It's not just one size fits all. Is that you can? I'm going to tune this into another key or something. And so, according to needs, according to what is needed. And so, I think that's a good image. Is that we can kind of retune. We can retune our practice, and whether it's during our day or a week or a month or year, we can retune, recalibrate. The middle way, that in tune, and I like that translation for like a samana. So that's a word that in the Pali it's translated variously, different things, and so practitioner, spiritual seeker, or the word samma. Also, saying the words are related, I understand. Hopefully, if I've got this wrong, by the way, if anybody understands Pali better than me, please correct me. But there's samma was a musical term, which meant in tune. So a practitioner who's in tune, one could say. And so to get in tune with a way of practice, a middle way of practice, which is effective, that we're not drifting into just laxness and deluding ourselves into thinking that this is an appropriate middle way for us. Not deluding ourselves into thinking that just really I'm going to really go for the second practices, because our practice should be something that is. Unless we are undertaking a period of maybe, like a designated period of intensive, maybe ascetic practice or just more intensive, is that because those are usually not sustainable. And sustainable practice is crucial. If we can't sustain, because it's a gradual path. This is a gradual path, and if we go too hard, too fast, too much, we can burn out. And you can burn out in various ways. We can burn out physically if we push ourselves. I know this happened to a good Dhamma friend of mine. They had a retreat period, and they said, "No, okay, I'm going to fast, and I'm only going to sleep for 4 hours a night. I'm going to meditate 8 hours a day." Burnout, it was a really seriously bad result. And so so you can look at that on one level and say, oh, how wonderful, aspiration, and wonderful, really, the aspiration was good, but it was not approaching it in a way that was sustainable, even within that short period. And so we need to be attentive to that. Again, having Kalyanamita, having community, whether we're living in community or family, or we have community around us, right? That's why, as Dhamma practitioners, having either having a place like this to go to, or a Dhamma group, or even just friends that we get together and talk about our practice and ask, maybe share, so that we can bounce things off people. And then also, if we just have our spiritual friends, is that even if somebody doesn't ask, if we see somebody close to us that maybe we think might be edging in towards a way of practice which is perhaps not fruitful, is just check in with them, not to lay something on them and say, well, I think you're not practicing well, because that's not. No, but just to check in and see how they're doing with their practice, and just talk about it, and see, or if we feel that some feedback is appropriate, would be helpful, and if it's somebody we feel that we can offer feedback to, and just to explore, because we might not be correct in our assumptions or perceptions. So So I think that's probably enough reflection on this very central part of the Buddha's teachings, this Majjhima Patipada, the middle way of practice. And so I'll leave that for your reflection this evening.